This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? Tonight, we're doing sort of a roundtable type of thing. It's going to be Lobo and Roejin from Project Archivist and Joshua Cutchin. And we start out talking about the way the paranormal and things like that have been portrayed in fiction, say the X-Files, back decades ago versus now. Like, what has changed? What has changed between Close Encounters and modern depictions of aliens in movies? And of course, it spirals on from that point. At the end, we get to a couple listener stories that are really interesting. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff in this week's show. I hope you enjoy it. And of course, the sad news that broke right after we got done recording this Friday night, the 13th, is that Art Bell has passed away. And Art Bell, to many, was what got them into paranormal radio and interest in the paranormal and conspiracies and things like that. As one person put it, even if you're not interested in the paranormal, you knew who Art Bell was. So he passed away at the age of 72, unfortunately, and he definitely made his mark. All right. So, on to this week's show. There you go. All right, welcome, Roejin.
Hello.
Lobo.
Greetings.
And Joshua.
Pleased to meet you.
And, Roejin, you're the one who came up with the subject for tonight's show. Why don't you give that to us?
Oh, putting me on the spot, are you? No,
I'm
anyways.
totally putting you on the spot.
When we were scrambling to come up with an idea or ideas to talk about for the show, I got to thinking there's something that's been rolling around the back of my head for a while. And it's really only a topic that's kind of good for a group discussion for the most part. We all grew up watching the X-Files back in the day, and we all remember when the show kind of took its nosedive, and then it finally went off the air. But back in the day, the X-Files was really big into the Greys and all of these different things. And also at the time, there were shows like, I think one was called Dark Skies, where it had to do with UFOs, invasions, and aliens and things like that. And then that kind of segment of paranormal kind of took a nosedive and kind of went off the public radar for the most part. And you saw shows like Fringe come along, who Fringe really didn't cover. They covered fringe science and different concepts of reality and consciousness and things like that, but they never really touched into the areas of Bigfoot, ghosts, and things like that. And then the ghost hunter shows and the searching for UFO shows and Bigfoot hunters and all of those shows came along. And they said, well, we're going to bring the X-Files back. And the first thing I thought was, well, how are you going to be able to do this now? Because all of the stuff that was sort of relevant back then isn't so much now. The state, quote unquote, of paranormal that's on television has now pretty much changed, because back when X-Files was on, it was kind of a niche thing. And that was something that really only, a lot of people weren't really doing that kind of stuff. It was kind of like, the fringe people were looking into that stuff. And then when the whole Ghost Hunters thing hit Sci-Fi Channel and reality paranormal came along, everything changed. So I was thinking, well, how has the face of paranormal and the things that we talk about changed over the years now that the X-Files is back? It's different now. It's not the same. They've even made reference to it on the show. They've made a few points of reference in there where it's like, all of the stuff we used to go hunting for isn't out there anymore. And it's turned out to be this, or it's turned out to be that. So it's like that show's kind of going and searching for new directions to go in. And you don't see like the Dark Skies shows anymore. You don't see the gray alien government conspiracy kind of shows and stuff. So I got to thinking, well, what is the changing state of paranormal that we see in the media? And is this the way it is now because those concepts have been, for the most part, explored, or do people view this stuff differently? Or are they thinking about it differently? Or is it just become that we all see this stuff and we're so used to it now?
Well, I part of the way suspect that in the 90s, it was like maybe the government isn't telling us the truth. And since then, we're all sort of just resigned to the fact that shady things are going on in a big way. I think that there was an erosion of trust between the citizen and the government of the United States in the 90s that was sort of obviously a progression since the Kennedy administration. But like, we're definitely beyond the Rubicon at this point. So I think that might possibly attribute part of the reason that the tone of series like The X-Files shifted from the more conspiratorial sort of alien gray tales to something a little bit more different, a little bit more appropriate for this day and age. Having said that, full disclosure, I have not seen either of the new series because I actually wasn't that huge of an X-Files fan to begin with. Don't tell me.
That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
I haven't finished it yet.
Is that a cause and effect kind of thing? Like now it's like nowadays everybody seems more placid to just accept their fate. It's like the thing with Facebook that we talked about last time. Yes, we all know that Facebook is monitoring us and harvesting our data. Yeah, unless, now we're all angry about it. But, but in the end, people are still using Facebook. Whereas like you brought up the thing about the government and conspiracies, it's like, well, of course the government has been doing conspiracies. That's just what it is. Move along. What's the next big story to talk about? And we all just kind of look at it with quiet resolve.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the frog has slowly been boiled,
Mm-hmm.
That we've to use that extended metaphor, the hot water has gone up by incremental degrees, and we don't necessarily realize how bad it's gotten. And the ironic thing is that a lot of us do realize that how bad it's gotten, but we just prefer to turn a blind eye because I think that we're just sort of being given a lot of bread and circuses in the form of our entertainment and our technology nowadays. But that's just my own personal 2 cents.
So we're just jaded now, and we're just. I mean, have we reached a point where we're just like, well, whatever news, I am part of this political party, and whatever this news station tells me is what I'm going to believe. May I have my latte now?
Well, I think I've talked with my folks about this. I think general day-to-day life has become orders of magnitude more difficult than it used to be in certain ways because of this, constant connectivity that we have. That you can't let a text message. I'm negotiating the sale of an instrument for a student, and I'm going back and forth between the guy who's selling it, and he won't let me go 12 hours without responding to him on this thing. And I'm like, dude, just calm down. Some of us have busy things to do, but we're in this lifestyle now where you're always expected to respond. You're always expected to be available. And I think that combined with all the extra trappings that people didn't have to deal with 50, 60 years ago, I think that's really sort of taking a toll on us, to the fact that when we are faced with the big stuff, the stuff that really matters, the stuff that has a bearing on the future of our country and even our individual lives, we're like, I just want to sit down. I just want to lay down and take my pants off. It's you get to the end of the day and we're just so worn down.
So I think Lobo has been trying to say something.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lobo.
No, I have not tried to say a single thing yet.
Oh,
I'm just fascinated by the conversation that's going on at the moment.
I thought I heard you start to say something and it cut you out.
Now that you have said something, what is your opinion on this?
Yes. I enjoy the X-Files. I've seen weird things. I don't believe the government, but I don't think they're hiding anything either.
So I'm sure they're hiding something.
This also has me curious because we have addressed the Bigelow Aerospace thing, and with everything that's going on with the whole time to launch thing. I'm wondering, DeLong, whatever, Tom Long, whatever. I mean, the guy's name is just like whatever. I don't know. I haven't really paid a whole hell of a lot of attention to much of that. But now it's like, because we are jaded and because of all of this stuff that's come along, this is the biggest kind of governmental UFO morsel we have had in a long time. Not us, but average Joe who watches regular media sees these things pop up, like the Go Fast video and many of the other videos that have been released. And Tom appears to have the public's interest right now, for lack of a better term. So it's like I remember when the Phoenix Lights happened, how big of a thing there was about that, and the sighting that was down in Texas. what the heck was that called now? The real big one, the one where it went over top the town in the same way. I can't believe I'm forgetting it. I know I'm forgetting it. I think Linda Moulton Howe was the one that covered it. That was where she kind of got her start from, I believe it was.
Yeah, my ufology card is going to be revoked because
which is fine. That's good.
I don't know what he's talking about either. So,
oh, you guys know about it, Lobo? What am I thinking about? You know what I'm talking about? I know you do. It was down in Texas. That's where there's people out there.
Was it Steven, Texas?
Stevensville. That's
Stephenville. That's it. Yeah.
All the ufology people are listening to us right now, ripping out their hair, screaming at us. Yeah. You guys suck. No, we've moved on.
Yeah.
But those were really big things, and then all of that kind of stuff just seemed to like go away. And now the whole this what's going on now is kind of the latest thing, and it's actually starting to die off now. Finally, I think you're not really hearing as much as more about it. Like the lifespan of the Go Fast video didn't last as long as the one previous to it.
Well, sure, because there was nothing really there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like a little tidbit. So some people were excited, most people went, yeah, okay,
exactly. So it's just it freaks me out. Like, well, it doesn't freak me out. I'm just really curious, like how all of this stuff has just evolved now to a point where it's like everybody's just kind of like meh. Well, I wonder if like they were to reveal. Yeah, exactly.
Well, when you look at like the Greys, you figure the Greys kicked in, in the late '80s, really after the publication of Communion and stuff. That's when you were to see a lot of the Greys. I mean, not that they weren't out there before, but they were one of many. The majority of cases involving Greys started after Missing Time and Communion in the '80s. So when the X-Files kicked that in, that was fresh at the time. Like people weren't that familiar with it. But now the Greys are such a part of common culture. I mean, there's little gray dolls, and I mean the Greys are they're just there. Even if people don't believe in them as real entities, they've entered our culture in a very entertaining sort of way, in an entertainment sort of way. So, if the X-Files deals with Greys, people go, "Oh yeah, okay, Greys."
We've seen this before.
Yeah. Although this is where I do my interjection that I refuse to believe that Communion was more of a cultural touchstone than Close Encounters of the Third Kind in 1977. So I
will agree with you on that.
I'm always fascinated when people sort of quote unquote blame Communion for putting that gray alien meme in people's heads when obviously it must have existed. I mean, in a big way, it must have made some sort of cultural impact with Close Encounters. But I do take your meaning. I'm just being a pedant right now.
Thanks, Josh.
People been describing Greys like shortly after Crawley described Lam?
Well, technically, there's cave paintings of Greys.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I could rattle off some fairy descriptions that sound like Greys too. I mean, I think that like in terms of, it's almost like an archetypal image, this sort of human fetus sort of imagery, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right, Lobo. It goes back even further than that. Although I don't.
People see them in DMT trips,
right? But in terms of but we're talking about in terms of like media impact, right?
Well, it all kind of ties together. That was just the springboard from it. But I think media wise, if you want to go back that far, yeah, I think the mass public's first real introduction to quote unquote gray like aliens was probably to the layman was probably Close Encounters, which to this day is still very much one of my favorite movies. And then it kind of went into a lull until Communion came out. Once Communion came out, everybody saw the cover of Communion and went, oh, it's that thing, and that's when people were like, yeah, I've seen this and I've seen that and blah, 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 but because when Close Encounters of the Third Kind was made, Spielberg went by firsthand reports and stuff that he was into, and that's what people were reported seeing. Did Betty and Barney Hill also report seeing gray-like creatures as well?
I was trying to remember that, but I don't think they initially did. I think it morphed into that over time because I think they saw humans first. Like Travis Walton mostly saw humans,
The aliens that were eventually described had these little sort of like caps on as well, which is not something that you really run into in a lot of Gray Encounters.
Because the Betty
So
and Barney show was kind of at the end of the golden age of ufology for the most part. Because up until then,
Yeah.
they had been seeing all kinds of aliens. You'd been seeing rock creatures and lizards and robots, and it was kind of like watching the old 60s sci-fi movies. People had been seeing everything.
So when you mentioned ghost shows, I had just recently watched the Ghost Adventures episode on the Stardust Ranch because I was curious. Like I'm not overly familiar with the Stardust Ranch. I listened to, I want to say, the Unbelievable podcast about it, and I mean they had fun with it.
So you're listening to the
Ghost
Unbelievable
Adventures one.
podcast now?
Huh?
You listen to the Unbelievable podcast now?
I listened to the Stardust Ranch episodes. That's all I've gotten through so far.
It can be fun. It can be fun.
Yes. Yeah. I enjoyed their take on it, but also, they're definitely have a more skeptical, let's make a little fun of this sort of take.
Yeah, that's the reason I listen to it, is it keeps both my feet on the ground.
But so I'm like, Ghost Adventures doing this. Okay, let's see what they got. And I mean, the episode was all right. I still walked away from it with the same feel about the Stardust Ranch, that I'm like, I suspect something's going on here, but I don't believe a word that comes out of this guy's mouth. But they interviewed Travis Walton. And they're like, well, this guy says he killed Greys. Let's talk to someone else who's had experience with Greys. And I'm like, Travis didn't see Greys. And so then they talked to Travis. And at no point do they point out that Travis did not see Greys, nor does Travis ever say he saw Greys. But they kind of give that implication to it. And then they talk to Travis. And Travis even says, well, there were humans before I saw any kind of alien. But he never says gray, and I'm like, wow, you guys edited this just right.
Yes.
If people don't know, they're thinking that Travis saw grays.
Many of those
I
shows
recalled
do that.
I thought I recalled some sort of less than human entity, though, that Travis Walton saw, right?
Things on the ship and fire in the sky were creepy as hell.
Well, yeah, but
he
we'll
saw aliens. He just didn't see typical grays.
Okay. But they were sort of like Greys.
You know what?
Right?
With the beauty of the internet, I can search this while you guys are talking about this.
Fake news.
I don't know if they shared all the same attributes, but I feel like I distinctly recall that there were Gray-like aliens, and then people, and then the more human-like people or aliens entities came back out, almost as if the things had sort of changed their appearance to be a little bit more palatable.
That could be. I know. And I think when I talked to him too, he said, or maybe it was during the film, that the film screening, he was talking about how it wasn't. They weren't the typical Greys.
See, now if you go back and read the descriptions given by Betty and Barney, they talk of Greys in 1965, when the abduction happened in 61.
Yeah, this is after the a lot of the regression that
They were also described in 47 little gray men.
Yeah,
47 for what?
Roswell.
Yeah, but Roswell's it's so polluted. It's easy to say, oh yeah, they said that at Roswell. It doesn't mean they actually did.
No, you show me an alien abduction case now, or an alien anything case now that isn't muddied. They're all muddied.
Oh, certainly a lot of them, and anything using hypnosis is going to be muddied. But Roswell's kind of the king of that. I remember Keel at one of was it Fort Fest or something like that. It's online somewhere. Someone asks him what he thinks of the new book coming out on Roswell, and he goes, "You mean the one where the person was 2 years old and has been hypnotically regressed to remember what happened that day in Roswell?" And the person's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Yeah, that's a bunch of nonsense. I don't even want to talk about that."
This is throw a monkey wrench into this.
Go ahead.
We're all familiar with H.G. Wells, correct?
Sure.
In 1893, he wrote a book called Man of a Million Years, or Man of Year Million. The description of the aliens within that story were a race of gray-skinned beings. And that was in 1893. They were a meter tall with big heads and large oval-shaped black pitched eyes.
Well, I think you have that in Star Trek too, isn't there?
If you
The
really want to go
original
down
Star
that,
Trek?
and if you really want to go down that route too, I mean, the trowels of the Orkney Islands literally apply to each of those criteria, and were said to come into the homes of people and steal people. They were called the Gray Neighbors or the Night Stealers. They had the ability to enter any home. So you were advised to not lock your door, because if they found your door locked, they would sure abduct you. So I mean, there's no doubt that the archetype has been there forever. I'm wondering when the term gray actually first appeared.
I'm reading Travis Walton's description right now. It's broken up into many different paragraphs, but their thin bones were covered with white marshmallow-looking flesh. They had on a single-piece coverall-type suit made of soft, sweater-like material, orangish-brown in color, large black eyes that are about the size of quarters. I could not see any grain in the material, such as the cloth has. In fact, their clothes did not appear even to have seams. Their bald heads were disproportionately large for their puny bodies. They had bulging, oversized craniums. I saw jaw structure and an underdeveloped appearance to their features that was almost infantile. Their thin-lipped mouths were narrow. I never saw them open. Lying close to their heads on either side were tiny, crinkled lobes of ears. Their miniature rounding noses had small oval nostrils.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought. And to me, that sounds like a gray, but I'm sure that there's some people out there who would say, well, the eyes weren't big. Well, it had ears, therefore it's not gray. It's not a gray.
Correct.
It's from beta reticula and not zeta reticula or some sort of goofy.
Well, I think it's an early archetype of the gray. I do think the gray archetype kicked in with things like Communion and Missing Time, where that then became what
maybe
people
they
seeing.
were hybrids. The only feature that didn't appear underdeveloped were those incredible eyes, those glistening orbs that had brown irises twice. I should read this in a sexy, sultry voice.
Oh, don't do that. Don't.
Those glistening orbs had brown irises twice the size of a normal human's eyes, nearly an inch in diameter. The irises were so large that even parts of their pupils were hidden by the lids, giving the eyes a certain cat-like appearance. There was very little of the white part of the eye showing. They had no lashes and no eyebrows. I really wish you would let me read that in a sexy voice.
No.
Or sing it to the tune of Betty Davis eyes. That would have been good too.
No, how am I supposed to sing that to Betty Davis?
but see, and that when you picture that with all those things, yeah, it has the oversized head and slightly bigger eyes, but it's more like a cat looking at you.
Yes, and we all know cats aren't creepy.
Right. It has some of the gray features and some not of the gray features.
Right.
The only thing that I'm seeing not gray is ears. Which
on the size of the eyes, though, eyes the size of quarters, usually they're the almond shaped.
Yeah, almond shaped.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Almond shaped or round eyes.
Exactly.
And they do.
They what?
They also don't have pupils in the modern gray. Also, the jaw is not generally very well defined.
Okay, so we can agree or disagree that these were not grays, but in my opinion, it's all macaroni and cheese. It's just a matter of what kind of cheese you put.
It's an early version of the gray.
Correct.
Well, and this to me, speaks to the fact that there is, regardless of what is going on, and I do think that there is an objective component to it, that a lot of the experience does have a subjective component. I think that's, these descriptions are close, but they're not quite close enough, and it's not like, somebody might come back and say, well, they're just the different types of races of aliens, but, we don't have different types of people with differences that pronounced, right?
You seen any of my family?
Yeah, I disagree
maybe.
with you. We do. You do.
So, some of us don't have ears and not have ears. I mean, if
True.
I don't want to turn this. I don't want to turn this into the phrenology podcast or something. But
Hey, lumpy head.
But I feel like there's a more uniformity than you have with descriptions of these grays and not grays. In addition to mantises and reptilians and giant bananas covered in terry cloth, is one of Greg Bishop's favorite, alien encounters that he recalls. You know, I just feel like that really underscores the fact that there is a subjective component to this. I just can't put my finger on where one begins and the other ends. I don't think, personally, for me.
Well, you know, also look at, since we're talking media too, look at Close Encounters, and then look at what's the one that came out just a couple of years ago that was really freaking good. Name's escaping me.
As you're thinking about it, even in Close Encounters at the end, all the little we'll use the term Travis aliens, because that's what the ones in Close Encounters more appeared like. All the little Travis aliens come out, and then you've got the big tall spider leg one that just kind of comes out and like flips everybody out. Like, what the hell is that?
Yep.
You know,
there was actually supposed to be a longer sequence with that really spindly one, and then there's the last one, which is the one you get the close up of, who I love. His name was Puck, which I just think is just a nice little alien.
Very Fey-like.
Yeah, exactly.
Shakespearean.
That's what they named him on set was Puck.
Canadian
so yeah,
superhero.
There was like,
Flight. Go ahead.
there was like a sort of a spectrum of entities that were supposedly represented in the original cut. In fact, one thing that I really found fascinating was that there were plans to have them going at different speeds and like literally like sort of flying through the air and doing all this other really strange stuff. You can find some footage of that test footage online that they didn't use for the deleted scenes. They were really, it seems as though the ending was going to lean a lot harder into the weirdness than they actually ended up doing.
Probably because they figured people couldn't deal with it.
Yeah. Well, all I know is that 6-year-old Josh Cutchin couldn't deal with it in its original form. So
Exactly.
Oh, dude, I loved that movie when I was a kid. I still love it. I still love that movie.
Okay, I'm still drawing a blank. What's the movie with the aliens coming down and teaching us how to communicate and use
Arrival.
Yeah,
Arrival.
Yeah.
So in our culture now, Arrival is a popular alien movie versus the 70s with Close Encounters. And that's how much I think our view of this stuff has shifted.
Did I lose you guys?
No.
Yeah, no, you didn't. I think that you made a good point, Seriah. And actually, in terms of depiction, I'm really quite bullish on the way that this stuff is being depicted now. I think the depiction, since even something as recent as the late 90s or the early 2000s, has become a lot more nuanced and a lot more mature, and a lot more embracing of some of the fringe elements. The fringe of the fringe is getting a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
And I know some people, there are probably some hardcore ETH nuts and bolters out there who are mad at me saying this, but I think it's exciting because we're not going to make any sort of progress with these subjects until we actually account for the outliers.
Well, you got to remember, all of this stuff that we've been seeing in all these movies was supposed to be prepping us for the day that they announced that extraterrestrials are real, to prime us to be like, oh yeah, we'll be able to deal with it.
I really hope Hollywood isn't the one that's going to lead the way.
Well, according to Tom DeLonge, that's part of the plan.
You know what?
Yes.
Just light me on fire now and roll me down a hill.
Well, don't worry. Uburu is supposed to be coming next week to take care of all of us again.
The Uburu's also always supposed to be coming.
Yes.
23rd.
It's really late.
Yes. Which is weird because
is someone actually
astronomers-
saying the 23rd?
Yeah, that's the new thing. That's the newest thing is that Uburu is going to be trying to destroy on the 23rd.
Oh man, I'm holding back some bad Nibiru jokes.
No, let them fly.
If on the 22nd a planet shows up and I have 24 hours, you better hide. Everybody better hide.
This
if it's coming, I'm killing people.
This type of stuff falls into the category of poor education when it comes to things like astronomy. And, if there was a planet anywhere near us the size of Nibiru, we would see it long before it could do any damage to us.
Amateur astronomers would easily see it.
Yeah.
My kid would be out in the yard pointing at it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, consider how far away Mars is, and we can see Mars with the naked eye. So if you're talking something the size of Nibiru, which is it's supposed to be way bigger according to Sitchin, we're going to see that a ways off. And it's not going to affect us until it gets much closer. And to say it's just going to show up is like, do you understand how space works? Yeah.
No, I don't think people do anymore.
That's what I'm saying.
That believe the planet's flat.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember one time the flat earthers were a joke, and now they've made a big comeback.
Yeah.
it's like, for real? You guys are serious? You really believe this stuff? You know, it's I don't know.
Well, like I've said before, we did a joke show on the Last Exit back in the late '90s where we had a representative of the Flat Earth Society with us for a night, and everyone was like, "Wait, this is really a thing?" I'm like, "Well, it's not really a thing, but it was at one point." And I mean, there is a Flat Earth Society, and yeah, and here we are 20 years later, and it's huge, and it's like this is not forward progress.
No.
But, that too comes down to people's distrust of the government and official, institutions and everything else.
So let's just go back into the Dark Ages because that was fun.
Yeah, well, the government's lied so many times. Why they're clearly lying about everything.
Sure, why not?
Ooh, I could go down a dark path with this real quickly. No,
lemonade is poison.
Yeah, because the people who are like Sandy Hook was not real. Those people, that is what breaks my nerve. When I see that kind of stuff, where the false flag stuff is what drives me into a rage. What's the term that Dane Cook uses? It's the sound that makes me want to punch babies.
Yep.
I believe.
and I've stayed away from the Sandy Hook thing, but like if you look at the Boston Marathon stuff, there's a lot of weird things in the whole Boston Marathon bombing that don't add up. It doesn't mean it was a false flag, but it means that somebody's probably covering something up along the way. Who,
Whenever
what, why?
Something like that. We have gotten so accustomed to watching CSI and Law and Order. Dude, crime is messy. It is messy and it's horrible. And we have gotten to a point where we think that crime should be like what we've watched on TV or what we've read in a book. And that's just not the way it is.
True.
Stuff comes out, it's misreported on, they backpedal, and then immediately these seeds of distrust are sown, and then all of a sudden there's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I have gone to a point where I grabbed a guy by the throat over Sandy Hook. The woman who lives next door to me bought the house from one of the teachers that died at Sandy Hook.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is real. This stuff really happens. It's messy, and it doesn't look optically clean. So people automatically jump to conclusions, and it drives me up a wall.
Well,
I think it's not only that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the Who What Why website had done a lot of research on the Boston bombing, and he's not necessarily a conspiracy nut, but he started taking the data they were releasing, showing where it contradicted, and then doing things like, okay, let's actually take a backpack, the same backpack these kids were using. Let's put the same type of stuff in it that they were, supposedly walking around with. And, he's like, okay, this is how big it would be. This is how heavy it is. Look how far it's sagging down. Look at what these kids are wearing, in the videos right before the supposed bombing. He's like, this doesn't match up. He's like, something else is going on here. He's like, I don't know what it is. I'm not jumping to any conclusions, but the data we're being given is too neat. There's something else there.
Well, and I suppose that a lot of what fuels a lot of the speculation is that at the same time, the powers that be will never let a good tragedy go to waste. So they see the fallout from these events pushing agendas, and they assume that they must be connected when in reality it's just opportunism.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's also definitely. But let's move away from that type of stuff.
Okay.
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I was going to say earlier, anytime I'm at this weird point now where anytime a tragedy happens of any kind, mass shooting, generally are the big ones because those are the ones that appear to be happening the most common. But anytime some kind of a tragedy happens, you can almost time how quickly, I'll say disinfo, how fast conspiracy theories pop up and start making the rounds. Like within minutes, you can see people before they even know anything at all whatsoever. This is a false flag, and this is why. Blah 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 blah. Now, I tend to wonder how many people actually believe that this stuff is happening, or they're just trying to capitalize on a tragedy. Like InfoWars Sorry, people, if you're an InfoWars fan, I can't stand it. I do not speak for everybody else here, of course. But it seems like anytime a tragedy happens, InfoWars are the main people that do that because it generates hits to their site. And if you're a conspiracy guy and you got ads on your site, you want to get people to your site clicking stuff and ingesting this stuff as fast as they possibly can. And there's a very large segment of people out there that they're looking for anything, anywhere they can, in any shadow possible. And that's just a way that the stuff works. Now, I wonder how many people actually believe that this stuff is legit or are just doing it for capitalization purposes to monetize or make money or do whatever they got to do. Like, I very frequently wonder how much of what Alex Jones is saying is actually an act, or if he only believes some of it, but a lot of it is an act just to rile people up to keep generating.
I think that's the case.
Yeah. So, and that stuff even irritates me because it's like you're playing on people's fears, and you're generating this big swell of just garbage. I almost swore. And that stuff irritates me as well. Like, as soon as a tragedy happens, it's like, all right, start the clock. Tick, 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 tick. Up there they go. There are the theories, and just how quickly. It's like when a virus spreads, how fast the virus spreads and where it goes.
Well, social media helps with that too.
Yeah. It's like you throw a bunch of crap at a wall and see what sticks. Okay, there's your theory. There's the conspiracy right there. Everything else fall off, but so that's what's sticking. That's what the theory is. So anyways, yes, move away because I could go on forever about this.
so to change this completely, if the one thing that hasn't changed a super amount in media revolves around magic, and it's one of the reasons I generally don't get into shows revolving around magic is that magic now, just as it has been through most of the late 20th century, in movies and TV shows, is always treated as a very materialistic thing. It has that fantasy component, that it's just another aspect of things. Whereas if you really delve into the occult, it's not like that. If you really delve into magic and how magic works, it has no resemblance whatsoever to how it's portrayed in media. But that really hasn't shifted much at all, from the 80s to now.
Have you watched the show The Magicians?
No. That's another one that kind of gave me that impression that that's what it was, and I went, I'm not watching this.
Yes and no. I mean, ultimately, The Magicians is more or less Harry Potter for horny college students, in my opinion. But there are some, as I've watched that show, there are little things in the background here and there where you could tell somebody's actually gone out and read some books on magic. It doesn't, like, if you are a practitioner or somebody who studies magic, you'll see little nods here and there kind of sprinkled into the show, but it also does have the Harry Potter aspect of magic in it. They frequently in the show, they make referential jokes and things like that. But when I was watching it, I'm like, there is a little bit to some of the stuff, because they reference like sex magic and things like that in the show as well. So I think whoever was working on the show was like, yeah, let's just sprinkle a little bit of this in here for people who are out there watching it. I don't think you'll like it, but you should watch it just, for giggles.
I have enough stuff that I actually want to watch that I don't need to watch stuff that I'm not going to like.
Okay, then. All right. Well, at least you know where you stand.
For instance, I haven't finished the X-Files, for instance. I think I still have 2 more episodes to go.
Have you watched The Ritual yet?
The movie?
On Netflix, yes.
Jalo Moose.
Yes. I just watched that in the last 2 weeks, and it was amazing.
That movie was very surprising.
That is exactly what that thing was, wasn't it?
It really was. It was a Jalo Moose.
A what?
No. A Jawa Moose.
A Jalo Moose?
Jawa. Upside down Jawa on a moose's body.
Okay, yes.
Star Wars.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
One of the best. Say what you want to about the film, but easily one of the best creature designs in forever.
The guy who wrote the story wrote the screenplay for that, as well as the corresponding book that goes along with it. Literally made that creature the living embodiment of Shub Niggurath, the black goat of the woods. He was shooting for that when he made that creature, because that's what it's supposed to be.
Oh wow!
He did a good job.
Yeah. When I saw it, I had to stop it and go, "What the hell is that?" Because I very rarely do that in monster movies where I'm looking at that going, "What the hell is that thing?" You know, I'm just looking at it.
I stopped it when it was first flashed as it ran through the forest. I was like,
so bizarre.
"Oh my god, I need to own this animal."
Yeah, exactly. Like I want a a Funko Pop of the darn thing.
Absolutely.
He wants a pet Jawa moose.
Yeah, exactly.
I want it tattooed on me somewhere.
I'll have a Jawa moose and I'll make him do the fandango.
Wow.
Jawa moose.
Holy cow.
Now that movie, I think, was it had that subtlety to magic to it. It had that folk magic sort of feel. It had what you don't get a lot of times in movies involving magic of any sorts.
I really thought it was going to go Blair Witch because there was elements of Blair Witch.
Oh, I know it. Yeah, totally.
And thank God it didn't.
Well, if we're strictly talking, what was that, Lobo?
Did you watch The Witch?
Yes.
Witch?
Yes.
That was
was
good.
awesome too.
The Vivitch.
And again, you have the subtlety there. You know,
Yep.
it's like it's not so materialistic. So do this and do that, and then here's your upgrade to the next level of magic.
Black Phillip.
But as long as we're talking about verisimilitude in regards to magic and cinema, I know some of my occult friends will disagree with me because there are some specifics that were lacking, but I think the sort of overall feeling of A Dark Song just really nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
These are all European movies, correct, or are they American?
Dark Song was Irish film company.
See, I think that's the common thread here. America views magic much differently. We're Disneyfied, whereas
that's a great way of putting it.
Yes, we're very like fairies are Tinkerbell and things like that, and magic is something that you see in Harry Potter. Whereas over in Europe, they're very old school about it. They have a much different attitude, and they're older too. It's an older country and older customs and things like that. But the more European you go, the more pronunciation of the classical feel of the magic that there is. Like Josh, when you were over in Ireland, it's still very much woven into the common thread there. We're here in America. It's like magic. Oh yes, I know who Aleister Crowley is. Ozzy Osbourne sings about him.
I had somebody over there put it to me the best that I've heard it, and it's over there their attitude amongst the Irish is amongst most people is I don't believe in the fairies, but I'm scared of them. Whereas in America it would be like I don't believe in magic. Full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also have to look at the fact that we have the poisoning of Christianity here that's causing a lot of the problems. That Satan's around every corner still, and no one wants to take responsibility for their own miserable actions, and magic is evil, and we're all going to hell in a handbasket. It's just we don't have that. We have become detached with our primal nature and our genuine connection to nature and the world around us. Sad. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Yeah,
European countries still have that lineage that goes back to the folk beliefs that people in America don't have so much.
No.
I mean, in certain communities you still have it, but overall you don't.
Well, we don't have any folk thing. We never did have any folk stuff here. The stuff that we had was brought over.
From Europe.
Well, okay,
there were people
Native
here
American,
who had it way before.
Yes. Correct. I was just getting ready to state that the Native Americans were
Roejin just committed a hate crime, guys. Here we go.
That's racist.
Not again.
but the Native American beliefs do not push over into our media. That's the thing.
No, and the other thing is their beliefs are so much different than the ancestral European beliefs that were brought over. You got to remember when people came here, it was like, well, we need to get rid of these savages. We need to push them out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is most Native Americans don't really want to share their history and heritage. Isn't a written down heritage; it's a spoken heritage passed on from one generation to the next. And we took everything else from them, so their stories and their heritage and things like that is really all they have. This is the way it was explained to me when I've talked to a few people. It's like, well, they don't want to give that up because it's one of the few things that they have left for the most part. Right. So another thing is their folklore. It's very distinct and different from what you have from the European countries. They're so far separated. Well, yeah, ish. Okay, also, we'll say ish.
If you want to go full on animist cultures, there's a lot of similarities.
Well, on the grand scheme of thing, yes, there's lots of, most cultures have a flood legend, a great flood legend of some kind. Even the Native Americans do. You have like pyramids are all over the world from all different time periods.
Stone circles, stuff like that. Neolithic stone circles around the world.
Mounds.
Little people.
Yes, there is all kinds of little people. Yes. Puckwudgies.
The Minnehoonies.
The mini what? Sorry.
Minnehoonies. They're Polynesian. Never mind.
Yeah. But that counts. That counts. And they're the Cherokee little people. That's a big thing. I mean, there are little people legends from the Southwest. There are little people legends all the way through Central and South America. Yeah.
And they're always jerks. No matter where the little people are always mean jerks.
Well, dude, let's think about this for a second. When you're small, everybody assumes you're weak and powerless. So
Yes,
by proxy, you have this pent-up rage and have to focus it somewhere. Not that I'm speaking from experience.
I was going to say
anything, but we have something called Napoleon syndrome.
Yes, not everybody can be passive, happy Smurfs.
Although to go full on nerd, you will find, for example, the Cherokee little people, the Rock people were the little people who stole children. The Laurel people were sort of they weren't exactly good or bad. They were just mischievous. And then the Dogwood people actually took care of people. And you can see that sort of belief reflected in, again, the British Isles with the Seelie and Unseelie courts as well. The good and the bad fairies. So mostly, like, if you look at fairy lore throughout the world, like, it's usually three things. Do they live underground? Are they short? And do they like to steal kids?
Oh, God, Josh is going to bring it back to fairies again.
Yeah, okay, Josh. Sorry, guys.
That's fine. I have no problem with that.
That well.
I'm totally kidding.
You still don't see fairies represented in our media all that much, other than the sort of Tinkerbell, with rare exceptions. I remember there was an early episode of Torchwood, the Doctor Who spinoff that
again European
had. Right, and it had some really nasty fairies in there who were looking to steal a couple of girls, and I was like, wow, they actually represented fairies closer to what fairies are actually should be represented like.
Yeah, fairies on film are not well represented. I think the best some of the best representations lately have been like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, Pan's Labyrinth. But like in terms of recently, it's not really. There was that film The Hallow, which was okay. I'm actually about 3/4 of the way through a book that is hands down the most compelling bit of fairy related media that I've ever consumed. It's a book from the 90s by Ian MacDonald called King of Morning, Queen of Day. My wife refers to it as my Bodice Ripper, my romance novel, because the cover is awful and the title is awful. but I mean, like, the things that it goes into are like not only the fairies, but it ties in everything from fairies to flying saucers to co-creation to it really does a great job. And it takes place over 3 different generations of women who have encountered the whatever this is behind the fairies, because you find out that it's not everything's as it seems, because again we're getting into like Jungian archetypes and other stuff. But the first, to sort of give you a flavor for what the book is about, the first third of the book is about the little girl who originally encounters fairies in turn of the century, Sligo, Ireland. And while she's convinced that she's encountering fairies. Her father, who is an amateur astronomer, is convinced that he's seeing communications from an alien species that's coming across the sky, and a comet that's actually passing over Ireland. So and then from there, it's the 3 generations of girls, and it's one of the closest things that I've read that makes me go, this might actually be exactly what's going on, because like I said, it starts out as sort of a book about the fairy faith, but it really begins to encompass the broader aspects of the supernatural and how it's really tied into us as people and how it sort of changes and shifts to appear in different ways. It's absolutely riveting book that one of my Twitter followers recommended, and I can't recommend it heartily enough.
And I am racking my brain also and trying to remember the name of the book I was reading that I still haven't actually finished. Strange Intruders or something like that. I'm completely blanking on the actual name of it, where they also deal with the whole co-creation stuff, and it's from the 1970s. And I've talked about it before.
That is Strange Intruders.
Strange Intruders is whatchamacallit, Weatherly's book.
Okay, I think you're right on that one. Strange Intruders.
But on the cover it actually says, like it's the first there was Close Encounters, and now there's this, and it throws out some really weird ideas that are actually in consideration now for explaining a lot of this stuff, and that's what Josh's explanation kind of made me think of. Like, I read this book and went, this guy really has the pulse of this thing all the way back in the 70s.
See, stuff like that. I'm always leery of catch-all, explain everything kind of theories.
I have this explains everything.
No, but when people try to tie things up, but it's human nature to want to do that, though. But when people want to tie things up into a package and say, this is this is that, this is it, this all ties together this way and that way and this, I tend to want to repel against those kinds of things. I don't. I know.
But also, when looking at the paranormal, there are too many connections for them to all be completely disparate. I feel personally.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. It's just that I get really leery of catch-all kind of theories, and I'm not saying that that I'm right or wrong. It's just I have a tendency to want to repel against that kind of stuff. Whenever it's like watching Ancient Aliens, and Giorgio comes out with his 19-foot tall exploding hair and says everything is aliens, and it's kind of like, all right,
Well, it's sort of what you're describing, and this is something I've really been trying to guard against, but that's sort of what I've been doing, I feel like, lately with, Therefore Faithful.
Yeah, well, older than him.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well,
so here's the difference, though. It's one thing to say everything's aliens. It's another thing to say there is something about reality that we don't understand that is allowing these things to manifest. And that's kind of where I sit with it. Like, we don't fully understand how we perceive reality, what reality is. And there are spots in reality that these type of phenomena can exploit.
Unless you're
it's probably right. But it's probably an in-between, where it's part psychological, part physical in some way. But it's so much that all these different things are the same thing, so much as all these different things are using the same hole in our knowledge to manifest.
Lobo, I don't think have me and you ever talked about this on our show? Have we ever? I wonder why. How come me and you have never actually broached this topic? Do me and you agree on this, or do you have your own theories on this stuff?
Yes.
Okay, then. We're back to the one-word answers.
I think we both have our own theories, but they're not too far. They don't differ that much.
Well, what is your theory?
We've had conversations off air.
Yeah, our best shows have never been aired.
Exactly. So we're like, when it comes to this, we're like, it feels like we've already covered it. Just, going round robin and like on the phone or whatever.
Well, what are some of your theories then? Because if we've never discussed them on the air, where do you lie in this? Do you have an opinion on it?
I've seen way too many things to say it's not real.
Right.
Well, yeah, I agree with you.
I know we had a conversation on Paratopia with Jeff and Jer, and that went around in circles. But I mean, I don't. For all intents and purposes, I don't think anything's coming from outside of our realm into here. I think they're here already. And the only reason why I say that is because they all have a humanoid appearance. All of them. I don't care what. If you're going to develop here in a terrestrial plane, you're going to have 2 eyes, 2 ears, a mouth, 2 arms, 2 legs. Doesn't matter the amount of digits. Doesn't really matter how your olfactory senses work. You're
like a toucan?
Dude, don't start. Don't start.
Okay.
I've seen too many things to say nothing's going on, but I've listened to enough wackadoos to go, I don't want to be lumped into that camp.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. I don't know what I believe, but I know what I don't believe. And I know when I hear it.
I know for me that why are there windows? If you're traveling through space, you don't need windows.
Well, you want to see the space.
For what? That serves no purpose. The other thing is,
why are there windows?
Again, why are there windows? If you're phasing in and out of dimension, then you would have more use for windows than if you were traveling across time and space to get here from somewhere.
Well, that's a dumb argument because why don't submarines have? Oh, never mind.
Submarines do have windows.
The windows aren't so that they can see out. The windows are so that we can see in. And by that I mean theater, you know?
Yeah, but again, why if you were here, okay, I'm going to go by my own experience. If I'm going to check somebody out, they don't know I'm there. They just don't know I'm there. I cannot be seen. I don't want anyone to know. If I'm observing, I don't want anyone to know.
Because your interaction of observing affects the experience.
Exactly. So if the windows are there just so Joe Dirt from the trailer park can look up at me with his 2 teeth and his pregnant cousin wife mama to tell her friends about it, then I've checked out of this. No. I can't. No.
So the book I was trying to remember was Miracle Visitors from Ian Watson,
which has nothing to sound like Strange Intruders at all. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It sounds like a hospice care company.
It does.
Yeah, doesn't it? But you know, when you say that it's not coming from the outside, it may be also that it could be coming from the outside, but it's using our perceptions to mold itself so that it becomes something we can perceive. Even if it is a giant toucan Sam.
Oh boy. It wasn't giant. It wasn't giant. It was a normal sized toucan.
Oh, okay.
Nobody has any idea what the hell we're talking about.
No one has any idea what I'm talking about.
I do believe Lobo has talked about that on this show before.
Yes. Yeah, I believe it was discussed. Yes.
So, but the thing is, when you see, especially these high strangeness things, it's hard to believe they have a distinct physical reality outside of that experience, like the one you had. It would make more sense if our perception of it is molding it in some way. So it could be from outside, and that we're putting the humanoid form on it. It could just be a patch of haze. And, you know, it's in our brain is going, that's a toucan. Well, you know, it's like, what? It's a what? You know?
How would if we were to perceive a fourth dimensional being, how would we perceive it? That's the question I've heard asked many times. And you know, some people have said, yeah, it's going to look like a ball of light or something like that. It's not going to, you know, if we were to see something that's great, that has more dimensions than we're capable of dealing with, which I don't know. I mean, the way I look at it, I was like, okay, so we're going to look at a picture and it's got multiple colors in it, but if there's colors that we can't see, we're just not going to see those colors in the picture, but we'll see everything else in the picture. That makes more sense to me. So, and I don't know.
And to quote John Keel again, I believe it was John who said that, if we were living in a 2-dimensional world and a 3-dimensional finger placed itself into our world, we wouldn't see it come or go. We would just suddenly see it appear. And when the finger was lifted back up, it would just disappear. But it is moving, just not in a way we're capable of perceiving.
You're hurting my brain. Yeah, that's a great way to put it for the most part. So, but again, I go back to, I resist theories that try to explain everything because it's very easy to get pigeonholed once you get locked into a belief concept. Again, Josh, therefore Faye, right. Which is fine. I can see where you're coming from. I tend to want to resist things that are like that. Well, this sounds like it works. So, because I mean, we know people, we all know people that get locked into a belief system. And then once they get comfortable with that, they try to push everything into that envelope. And it's kind of like that friend that that all of a sudden finds God and becomes a born again Christian. And you're like, whoa, hold on here. Maybe that makes sense. I don't know. I mean, we've all had that friend too.
It does. And I've said this, I can't remember where I said this, but I said this someplace recently. And I was talking with Tim Renner about it. For me, it's less about, everything being faithful and more along the lines of, look at this great model that explains a lot of this. I wonder what it's really trying to describe. Because I don't necessarily believe in the objective reality of what you are being presented in like sort of fairy literature. But I think that whatever it's trying to describe is very much akin to a lot of the things that we experience when we take a look at the paranormal. It's almost like why try to reinvent the wheel when I have this nice Porsche that you might want to hop in and take for a spin because it works right now.
Yeah.
It might not be perfect, but it works. So let's just take a look at this too.
Whereas my belief tends to be, it's like, all right, we can see everything in this box. And if we look outside of this box, we can see other stuff. So it's kind of like, all right, well, let's lump all of that into one thing where in my mind, it's kind of like, wow, there's all of this different stuff outside of this box. And to try to lump it all together into one thing, it's kind of like looking at the ocean and going, wow, look at all those fish. They must all be some kind of shark. When in reality, you have jellyfish and lobsters and crabs and, you have all kinds of different things down there. And it's kind of looking and going, well, that thing right there, that's an amorphous thing that people call a jellyfish. It's just a different kind of shark. And in reality, it's probably a whole bunch of other different things that, because they're all living in the water, they're all different things, but we just kind of throw it all together into that one lump thing there. And
I think that's excellent points.
That's kind of where I lie when I look at this stuff. I resist very hard wanting to go, all of those fish are sharks.
Well, certainly. So, my goal is to try and figure out how it affects our perceptions. Like I want to dig down into how we perceive things, why we perceive things differently, and how we can deduct more about what we're encountering based on our limited ability to perceive and the way our brain makes sense of things. Because that's the other part of it. Our brain likes.
For me, it just stops at, we're not equipped to deal with that. We don't have the quote unquote technology to be able to process that, to be able to understand that. We can't see ultraviolet light, but
we can with technology.
Correct. Maybe, and our brains just don't have the technology yet.
Fair enough, but I mean, I think that it's worth when we, especially like stuff like that, the infrared, the things that we pick up in the infrared, UFOs that can be picked up only in the infrared. That's interesting.
Yes.
Because that suggests they're right here. They could be here all the time, but we just can't see the frequency at which they're at.
Well, it's like when Tim was on both of our shows, your show and mine, where he was describing the phenomena of the flannel man and these other experiences where people have seen these creatures and the creatures look up and they're like, whoa, you can see me? You're not supposed to be able to see me, So in a weird, creepy kind of sense. It's like these things, there are things that could be coexisting right next to us all the time for the most part, that we're just not, that we just are not aware of. Can you imagine how much that would suck to be one of those kind of creatures and coexist in a world with things that can't see you, but you just become so mundane to being around them? It's like, yeah, they can't see us, so we just got to go about our daily business.
Someone had left a comment about the Flannel Man show saying, so somewhere there's a dimension of all flannel men, and every once in a while we pop into their world and they're like, what?
Yes, it's located in Seattle, actually.
Nice. It's a hipster bar.
Somebody sent us an email that actually found us through your show, and they had said that they brought up the similarities about Twin Peaks, which is probably why I brought it up earlier. They said something along the lines of, "Isn't it strange that Tim brings up this phenomena of the flannel man when the alien creatures that were in Twin Peaks wore flannel?" Or something along those lines. And me, I'm like, I can't get into Twin Peaks. It's just, I don't know. I'm not in that level of coolness or something. So I didn't know anything about it, but I'm like, I don't know if Tim's watched Twin Peaks or not either. But, he brought
lame.
up that. Yeah, I guess I suck.
I have not finished the new season of that yet either.
Yeah, apparently there's aliens in there that wear flannel.
Cool.
And that he thought that maybe, people are just bringing this up because the connection between Twin Peaks and the flannel wearing creatures that are in there. So, whereas in my brain, I go, yes, I now I have an envisionment of everybody on Star Trek wearing different colored flannel shirts, The people that die always wear red flannel. The science officers wear yellow flannel. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Stop saying sorry. You don't mean it.
Okay.
So, while we still have a little time, there are two stories that people have sent me that I wanted to read, and I want to get you guys' thoughts on them. The first one is from Gil, and he says, "I just saw something really effing weird. Around 9 p.m. Central, this was April 4th, when I had parked my car and had a handful of bottled water and coffee and was carrying a shoebox containing shoes," which...
Wow, go figure.
Okay. I looked up, and even though my front light was on, and so was the neighbor's, something caught my eye out of my peripheral vision. I immediately snapped my gaze to what looked like twin airplanes. I could see running lights or something on them, but they acted a lot more organically. They flew to and apart from each other as if they were birds or insects in long, graceful curves that seemed as if they would cross and return, but I didn't see them do that. They instead drifted close enough that the light on each one nearly touched, but didn't. When they got close enough, they'd continue their swanning curve back out. This they did for maybe as much as 2 minutes, certainly long enough for me to put down what I was holding, get my iPhone out and try to film them, but with the lights on and as dim as they were, I was sure I'd get a lot less than if I just continued to watch them. My vision of them started as they crossed Orion, which was southwesterly from my point of view, and followed them as they disappeared behind the roof of my building due west. They were brighter than the stars behind them, which is why they caught my attention, but not brighter than airplanes. In fact, I live under the flight path of helicopters. By the time they get to my place, they must be getting ready to land because they always seem to be breaking the 500-foot FAA ceiling, which upsets me enough that I go outside and flip them off whenever they get loud enough. I see planes at night often enough. Hang on. I see planes often enough at night, often enough, but on a heading that is straight. Each of these objects had a single light. I couldn't tell whether or not it was strobing. All I really saw was the movement of the they made when their flight went from the closest to heading back out again. The movement was like something you'd expect to see in water, like tadpoles or some such, a lazy but entwined curve that both objects shared with each other. They were playing games, or they were two lovebirds in a mutual sky ballet. I couldn't tell if the movement of these objects was organic or simply looked organic, but either way it seemed so. I expected to see these objects, let's just call them UAP, swerve inside the curves of each other, but they never did. It's easy to see how people initially mistake their unidentified sightings as airplanes. I guess that's what we expect to see in the sky, but these could not have been planes or even drones, as I doubt even at an air show you would see two planes attempt something so dangerous. And this was without any audience other than myself, as far as I could tell. The lights on the other side of the building are comparatively much brighter than on the side from which I viewed, so running around there would have been fruitless. I've seen some strange things in the sky, but these are the closest objects I've seen. No sound. I barely perceived them as it was, but they were real and their movement was surreal. I was 100% sober, on no recreational drugs or anything that would make me imagine what I saw. I log it as unidentified weird, and I'm curious if you have ever seen anything like it or know of such a sighting similar to mine. And I know John Keel had talked about like people seeing airplanes that made absolutely no noise and moved in ways airplanes couldn't move. So that's what it makes me think of.
Well, let me say something first. I'm going to say this on Lobo's behalf. Just to be clear, there was no windows on these things, correct?
He only saw the lights.
I'm sorry. My initial first thought is to go to the sky lanterns or something like that. I have seen them bob and weave in the sky the same way when they get caught on air currents, they move around very similarly. Having not seen this firsthand, I can't. I'm going to go to the skeptical standby of I don't know because I didn't see it myself. I will, however, commend the person on having the wherewithal to be able to document everything as much as possible as he was experiencing it.
Yes.
That's pretty cool, which adds, in my opinion, legitimacy to the fact that he did actually have a legitimate experience. Because most of the time when people see these things, they don't like. He sounds like he took a somewhat of a scientific approach of, this time, this temperature, blah blah blah. The lights were this kind of color.
Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? No, those things don't fit. What else could it be?
Yeah. It's like I've said before. Once you realize that what you're looking at, you mentally go through the checklist of not this, not this, not this, not this, until eventually you get to the lowest common denominator where suddenly you go, that's not normal. And then you have a weird moment of disconnect, which I've brought that up many times. I'm very fascinated with that moment of disconnect to the point where you absolutely cannot say that is something that doesn't make any sense there. Now, having said all that, there have been reports of people seeing like sky mantas, organic like aerial phenomena, strange creatures. You bastard.
Yep.
So yeah, we've heard reports of that before, which those kind of incidences I find very fascinating. It's like, okay, you're telling me you're seeing a giant, I think there was a report of an octopus or something like that about last year, I believe, at the end of summer. There was a report of a giant, like, flying squid creature in the sky of some sort. But those sightings are largely marginalized for the most part because they don't fit in any kind of category of, like, it's not a nuts and bolts craft. It's not just lights. You're seeing Shamu flying.
Yeah, you're getting into Trevor James Constable sort of territory here with ideas of like Dirk Opel and the sort of amoeba life forms in the upper atmosphere.
Yes, exactly. Excellent reference, by the way.
Thank you.
That's very commendable of you.
What are your thoughts, Josh?
Very.
No.
Love you, Josh.
no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not really sure. It's no secret that, in terms of lights in the sky, I actually typically defer to a hodgepodge of things, from misidentification to unorthodox aircraft to misunderstood or not undiscovered, rather, natural phenomena, or anything and everything in between, including the actual extraterrestrial and visitation. My first reaction with thinking about the lights coming closer together is that sort of, I wonder if that's sort of a little bit of a parallel of that falling leaf motion that you see in so many reports. Like they're both leaves falling in the same direction. Maybe, I'm not sure. But it's an interesting account. I haven't heard anything quite like it. But I don't really think I have anything that's going to be profound to add that you nor Roejin have said. So.
I would also say that a lot of people, in even describing what seem to be nuts and bolts type crafts, will sometimes say that they feel like what they're looking at is a biological entity. And they can't always determine why they feel that way, but they feel like they're looking at something that's alive that looks artificial.
Yeah, sort of like a biomechanoid sort of thing.
Yeah.
There are tales of UFO sightings, like in the Old West, which the movie Cowboys and Aliens actually borrowed quite liberally from, of UFO snake-like creatures, organic creatures.
Yeah, but that was based on a graphic novel, though. Come on.
But those stories were brought about from old news stories and old UFO sightings from that time period. And I'm trying to remember, I think me and you talked about on our show some kind of Native American legend of a sky creature like this.
Star people.
I don't think it was star people, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't remember much about it.
So I could literally say anything. You've got nothing.
No,
it's all true. Even the part about the lima beans in the car chase.
Wow, that's a really obscure ancient reference that nobody's going to get.
SpongeBob fans will.
All right, so here's the other story I was sent this week. This one comes from Mac, who I believe is in the Netherlands. He said, really enjoying the show. You jogged my memory of an experience that slipped my mind when you talked about the shadow liquid moving creatures. And that's something I have seen myself, and where it looks like liquid darkness kind of moving.
Like a
he said,
pool.
I was sitting. Yeah. He said, I was sitting on my back porch at night with a field behind our house. At the end of the field, it goes down to a retention pond. I looked out toward the pond, and my eyes caught two coyote silhouettes. Not just silhouettes, but picture-perfect silhouettes, like on a postcard or something. As I looked at them, and they started to move at the same time, in the same direction. As I looked closer, something was wrong with the way they walked, and I noticed their legs did not move. The silhouettes just moved like cardboard cutouts in the field. Once I noticed the cardboard cutout of each coyote in unison, they stopped moving, and at the midsection of their bodies, they began to separate. The separation of each coyote turned into two very small humanoid figures, two for each coyote. One was the back end of the coyote, and the other was the front end. The humanoids pulled out of the coyote shape and kind of uncurled themselves and stood right up. Then all four of the humanoid creatures ran in different directions down into the pond, where I lost track of them over the edge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lovecraft right there, man. That's the moonbog.
You know, I find it really... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Josh, is it Faye?
No, damn it, you guys.
Wow. Wow. Let's throw Josh under the bus again.
It does sound like it could have some fake connections on this one.
No, I was actually going to go in a little bit different direction. This idea, this sort of talking about this liquid blackness, I find it fascinating that so much popular media has sort of latched onto this liquid, inky liquid, black goo sort of motif. I mean, you find that in the X-Files. You find it, again, in something like Prometheus. And, I sort of touched upon sort of the motivic / metaphoric idea of, the liquid ETs in a Trojan feast. So I think it's interesting, this idea of the other, or something mysterious, or the unexplained rather, being sort of mercurial. I think that in a lot of ways it makes it on the face of it doesn't make sense, but if you look at it in sort of a deeper subtext, it makes perfect sense.
That, I don't know. That's one of the most unusual stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's a real strange one, though. I mean,
Again, coming out of Europe, Netherlands.
True.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. I mean, you had me at cardboard cutouts moving across the field, and all of a sudden they stop. It's like, uh-oh, we've been made. Well, now what do we do?
Right.
It's the fuzz.
Yeah, no kidding. I got an idea. Let's split into a bunch of really strange creatures and freak them out. Got it. Let's go.
But again, this is one of those instances where it seems like it's theater, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When is it not?
Let's put on a show.
I don't know what I would have done in that
I've seen some
situation.
weird stuff, man, but that's woo. I mean, I've seen animals before out in, just beyond the periphery, and they're not animals. And then they assume they're what they are, and you're like, okay, you had me fooled for a second because you looked almost right. But
Well,
they're
I was going
always
in
just outside.
the direction of like maybe he's having some kind of a spirit walk, or maybe his spirit animal is coming to him and talking to him. Maybe it's coyotes. And then it went to no.
I didn't know there were coyotes in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I didn't either. I didn't know. I wasn't aware that coyotes existed in the Netherlands. Netherlands? I talk. Yeah.
Although I wouldn't interject. I'm not sure. I wasn't aware that the that the coyote was found in the Netherlands either. I don't think. I'm looking at a map of the coyote's range, and I don't see anything currently listed, sir.
Okay.
But
Back
it's
to you in the
interesting.
story.
But it's interesting that it's a coyote, because what is coyote in Native American lore?
The trickster.
Yep.
Well, it's Mr. Fox.
You know what? I want
Coyote
to talk to
Fox,
this guy.
Anasazi.
Dude, if you're out there
Lord
listening,
Fox.
send me an email at projectarchivist@gmail.com, because I'd like to actually, or heck, even Seriah here. I would like to talk to you. I'd like to hear a firsthand account directly from you of what the situation was and ask you some more questions. Did he go over and check out the area the next day or anything like that? Has he been back there since? Has he had
Don't tell
experience?
me homie booked.
What's that?
Tells me homie booked, man.
I mean, what was there anything going on in his life at the time?
Right.
What are the things leading up to this? Are there any experiences in his life that would lead him to see this kind of thing? I'm very curious about this one. I've never heard anything quite like this. Now I'm very intrigued.
Yeah.
As
It's
well.
that is why I wanted to read it, because he sent this to me initially, not so much, hey, can you read this on the air? Just it just reminded him, and I said, okay, I really want to read this on the air.
Yeah, that's
And he said he was fine with that. So
yeah, I'd love to talk to this dude. I'd love to hear. Yeah. We need to interview this guy collectively as a whole or something. We need to throw him down and put him under the microscope. Not because I don't believe him. It's just such an interesting and unusual story that you normally don't quite normally hear.
No, you don't. That's a first for me. Coyotes and then creatures.
Yeah. Shadows
Cardboard cutouts.
Shadows are one thing, but when they're morphing from that into little dark beings.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're all flummoxed now. Congratulations.
Huh?
Well,
award.
I think we're almost out of time anyway. So that seems like a proper ending to this meandering adventure tonight.
Cool.
So, Lobo, Roejin, where can people find you guys?
Well, I'm in Connecticut.
Okay, you want to give everyone your address? They can come over and hang out.
346 Quinnipiac Street, Wallingford, Connecticut. Building 1, first floor. Come on down. My boss will love to see you.
It's 32 Park. Never mind.
No, don't you dare. Don't you dare. I'll send him to your house.
No. I wouldn't do that.
So, where can people find you?
You want to take this one, Lobo? Because I usually answer it.
On
Fantastic.
Facebooks?
Okay. You can find our Facebook page on the Facebooks. You can find us on Twitter at Project Archivist without the T, because there's not enough room to put it in there. You can find our show on any kind of podcast aggregator, projectarchivist.com. You can Podbean, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere out there. Our show is hosted off of Podbean. So if you join up on Podbean, you can find us on there. You can find me on here on occasion, ranting and raving. Very rarely you can find Lobo on here.
Or anywhere else for that matter.
that's pretty much it. We're on sort of a little short break right now for the most part because both of our lives are just kind of chaos at the moment. But we're still running best of episodes and things like that. So,
all right, cool. And Joshua,
I'm helping.
Josh, where can people find you?
I can be found on the reg here on Where Did the Road Go? Regularly from time to time. That's what on the reg means, kids.
I had a completely different vision in my head for a second, but go ahead.
And I can also be found on my website, which is joshuacutchin.com. Got a new blog coming up in the next couple of days. You can also find links to all my books there as well, and I try to keep a pretty up-to-date list of all my podcast appearances.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you all. And a special thanks to our Patreons who are donating at the $10 or above level. Christopher Sheehan, Mark Brady, Allison Cook, Christopher Vaughn, Robert Groom, Chris Elmquist, Scott Morris Everett, Super Inframan, Patricia Giaquinta, Lauren Melton, John Eddy, Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, and Carla Mahoney. Thank you all so very much. All right, and that brings us to the end of the show tonight. For patrons, I know it's been a little light on stuff this month. I'm going to try and make up for that in the next couple of weeks. So fear not. I have some cool stuff we're going to try and do. And a couple things I still have to put up. So, other than that, I guess we're done for this week. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.